This is a football podcast, man. Meat, football, good. Man, we talk football. We eat burgers.
Welcome back to Scramble Drill, the Dynasty Dive podcast with myself, Ben Watts, and Landon Davis across the screen from me. Landon, I can give you right now potentially the best news you could give anyone in the world in this moment. The NFL season starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It's Christmas Eve.
The only better news I could say is, do you want to sit down and watch the game right now?
That would be better. Your real co-host of this show, Josh Johnson, had a child less than 24 hours ago. We're not talking about that.
That means nothing.
We're not talking about that.
That's his problem.
We are talking about his problem is crazy. We are
problem.
talking about not the joy of having a child, the joy of Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson on Thursday Night Football.
And then we get a game on Friday. And then Sunday, potentially the greatest day of our lives. Because, that's the full swing kickoff. And then Monday Night Football. We get 5 straight days of football in.
It feels real good. Feels real good to have this in front of us.
We are officially so back. We are back.
Yeah, we're back. We're definitely back.
But in all seriousness, congratulations to Josh. So realistically, I don't know when you will be listening to this episode because Josh is obviously our producer, editor. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be a couple weeks before you get this. Who knows?
This one may just be for us, Ben. Maybe this one may not get out there.
It very well could be. Well, let's at least move on to some news. The saga is over. Brandon Ayuk got his contract. Thank goodness.
Oh my gosh. It's over.
And it's
that's all we can say at this point. It's over.
Someone was going to give him this. I'm glad it was the 49ers, I guess.
I said it at the beginning of the offseason. I was hoping for other landing spots. I had my eye on a couple that I was really interested in. But once it got down to like Cleveland,
that one was scary,
or Pittsburgh or some of those, I was like, yeah, let's just go to San Francisco. I think there's a good chance Debo's on a different team next year, definitely in 2 years. So it's a pretty good spot.
Yeah, he's could be the wide receiver 1 starting next season.
Even if you think he's the wide receiver 2, like it's really close. It's not like Chase and Higgins. It's like, they're about tied right now. So.
Yeah, no, it's and I like Higgins as a talent, but like Debo and Ayuk are very close talent-wise versus it's just a huge gap between those two guys. Just because Chase is that good. On the same team, 49ers, Trent Williams re-signed. So the 49ers they're full strength, 100% ready to go.
This is a much bigger deal for the 49ers than Ayuk signing.
Yeah, no, it actually is.
I was honestly a little worried for my Brock Purdy owners out there because you look at his stats with and without Trent Williams, and it's staggering.
It's a difference.
The difference. Like, it's staggering. So him being back, you could truly make the argument he's the second best player in the NFL. I don't think I'd go that route, but a lot of people would. He's a great player. So this is huge for that offense. I mean, it can go now. I was a little worried about them if he was going to miss 3-4 weeks. Like, what are they going to look like the first month of the season? But with him back, they'll be all right.
No, they can. They really do just reload it from last year.
Right.
I don't know who they lost, if they lost anybody.
I mean, Greenlaw won't be back probably. He's probably hurt still. But I mean, offensively, everyone's back basically.
Yeah, no, it is full steam ahead. Same team actually. The one guy they added, Ricky Pearsall, got shot over the weekend.
this is like, I know Brian Robinson got shot 2 years ago, but this is the weirdest NFL player getting shot story since Plexico Burress. Have you dove into this?
A little bit. So this is what I know is that somebody held him at gunpoint over like a Rolex watch.
Yeah.
Somehow, Pearsall went for the gun, struggled for it, got shot, took the gun from the guy, and then shot him. At least that's what I've heard.
That's where I'm at with it, and that is a crazy story.
That is legendary status before you've taken an NFL snap.
Ricky Pearsall's a bad boy. That is a bad boy.
That's a dangerous man.
If he is taking the gun from attackers...
No, give me this. I'm going to shoot you. He hit him with the Uno reverse card.
So I don't know what this means. I'm not going to even guess what this means for his fantasy availability this year. But, I mean, he's a dog for sure.
I wasn't
he's a dog.
expecting much to begin with, unless Ayuk left.
Right.
And what's crazy is Pearsall got discharged from the hospital like 2 days ago. Like, they said he was in the weight room this week after he'd been shot and discharged. He's lifting weights and working out with the team. Like, he's completely fine.
If there's one thing I've learned from NFL injury reports, it's that chest can mean anything. When they say a chest injury, they could be talking about his knee. Like, chest means anything in the NFL. So I don't know where exactly he got shot. It doesn't seem like it really hit anything. But
no, they said it missed every vital organ, which I would assume so if he got discharged from the hospital like the same day he got shot.
If he's pumping iron already.
Man gets shot with a gun. The hospital's like, dude, you're literally fine. Get out.
You are okay.
That's Wolverine right there. Go ahead and nickname him in Sleeper, like where you can nickname players. Just go ahead and nickname him Wolverine. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah. I don't have any conviction about his price or his anything about this year. Nothing. But I like the guy. I'll tell you that.
No, the price stays the same for me because I wasn't putting any stock in him anyway. But I want him just on my team to say I've got Ricky Pearsall on there.
I've got a take. I'm about to say it, and it sounds crazy coming out of my mouth, but this is true, I think. Brandon Ayuk re-signing is a bigger deal to his value than him getting shot in the chest. Is that fair?
Yeah, actually.
Is that fair?
A gunshot wound to the chest didn't touch his fantasy value. Brandon Ayuk did.
Brandon Ayuk re-signing is a much bigger deal for his value than him getting shot in the chest with a gun.
I was on Twitter yesterday and I saw some dude was like saying the Bengals are going to send somebody to shoot some like 6-string receiver for the Bengals because Ricky Pearsall got shot and Brandon Ayuk came back to practice like the next day. So like the Bengals were going to shoot a receiver to get Jamar Chase back at practice.
Whatever it takes at this point.
Speaking of Jamar Chase, he was continuing to hold out until today. He finally practiced in pads.
He did practice today.
He was
okay.
He didn't do a full practice. He was limited in his practice, but he showed up in pads, was running routes, was stretching, was catching passes from Burrow. So I can only assume this means he's going to play.
It's hard to overstate how poorly the Bengals have handled this, but
it's bad. It's been bad.
It is good that he was back. I was ready to be like, I haven't really been worried all offseason he wasn't going to play. I was ready to come on here and say, like, if there's ever a time to be worried, now's it. But him hearing he's practiced today, that makes me feel good. I mean, I would assume he suits up Sunday, and if he suits up, like,
you're not going to
whatever.
You're not going to bench Jamar Chase. Like, come on.
No, you can't. Like, I don't care what. I don't care who's on your team. You can't bench him. Like, you're playing him. If they come out and say he's not really conditioned, he's going to get about half the snaps, you play him. Any format, play him.
Yeah. Well, think about it here. Like, he missed his entire junior season of football.
Yep.
As a business decision because he knew he was going to be a top draft pick. And so after missing an entire year of football, came out and had 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns as a rookie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Jamar Chase.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. The last one, this is
my
another
take.
big one.
That's my take on the situation. He's pretty good.
He's pretty good.
He's
Well,
pretty
this one is going to sting. I know you're not a Chiefs fan, but you're definitely a Patrick Mahomes fan. This is a huge Patrick Mahomes fan sitting across from me. It is going to sting not having CEH there on the field with him for the first 4 weeks. CEH going to start on the pup.
Sticking with the 2019 LSU Tigers, CEH. Yeah, I mean, what was he? RB3 on that team. I did. I've heard. Here's something I want to bring up. There is a little bit of smoke in the Kendre Miller to the Chiefs fire.
A trade
right
like
now.
that happening?
Yeah, there's a little bit of smoke to that, which would be interesting.
I haven't seen anything about that.
I've seen a little smoke, Kendre Miller to the Chiefs, and that would be interesting.
Yeah. If Kendre's
That little 1-2.
healthy. If he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, he's
great.
not healthy right away, but I'd be more interested, in his long-term value, I might not be as interested in, but like him being relevant in deeper 12-team leagues this year, I'd be interested. Like, Jerick McKinnon was kind of relevant a couple years ago in the pass-catching role.
Yeah, no, he was very relevant. I swear he had a touchdown a game.
Right, and Kendre Miller at this point would be more talented and better than him. So if Andy Reid goes out and trades for him, I'm interested. So that's something.
It's clear the Saints don't like him. So
yeah, the Saints are a little down. I still don't hate his value in Dynasty, but the Saints are down on him. It's just something interesting to monitor.
Yeah, no, that is. I didn't even know that was in the rumor pipeline. So that's cool.
It's floating out there.
All right, so we got a couple agendas for today's episode. The first thing is we're going to talk about, and I don't even know if necessarily they're bold predictions, but it's just kind of predictions on our part after this season for Dynasty, like where certain players are going to land, how do we think values are going to shift with a few different guys, and then after we talk about that, we're just going to go over some trades that people sent in and some of them actually happened in leagues that I'm in, and just kind of break those down and just see what we think about them. So let's jump into some bold predictions. Landon, you have the floor first. What's your bold prediction for Dynasty?
I'm looking at these. None of these are like the hottest takes ever, but these are definitely minority. They're definitely minority opinion predictions that we have. Yeah. So my bold prediction, number one, is this time next year, Breece Hall is the Dynasty RB1. Not Jahmyr Gibbs, not Bijan Robinson. It'll be Breece Hall, who's older than them, jumping everyone to be RB1. And the reason I say that is because I love Bijan. I have 4 Dynasty leagues. I'm a Bijan owner in 3 of them. I love Bijan Robinson. But I think the workload Breece Hall is about to get this year is going to be insane. It's going to be I think of all the top guys, other than McCaffrey, he's going to have the biggest workload, bigger than Bijan. And so if he can pull off a RB1 season, which I think is in the realm of possibility, like a redraft RB1 season, I think when people see the workload he got and maybe Bijan, he gets much bigger than last year, obviously, but Tyler Algier still gets a little bit of run, and maybe Bijan finishes, maybe Bijan finishes in the top 5 of running backs, but maybe not RB1, and people see what Breece did, see the workload he got, and be like, if we can count on that for 2 more years, 1 more year, 2 more years, it's enough to put him at RB1. And I'll make it clear at that point, I'll probably be saying he's a sell. Like if he's the RB1, I'll probably be saying, okay, you can tear down from him. But that's my prediction. This point next year, when you're doing your startups, Breece Hall is the first running back going.
No, that's interesting to me because I feel like some people are making the argument right now that he is the dynasty RB1, and I get it. I don't agree with it. I don't think you do either, at least not right now. But yeah, no, that is interesting because you got to think that would put him. How old is he right now?
I believe he's 23.
Because age doesn't matter as much with tight ends. It doesn't matter with quarterbacks as much as receivers. But like running backs, people pay attention to age. Let me look. I'm genuinely curious. What is that? Okay, you're right. He's 23.
So he'll be 24.
He's going to be going into 24. Bijan and Gibbs will both be 23 at that point, with 3 more years or 2 more years for sure. No, 3 more years because they were first round picks.
Yeah. So the only hitch is that those guys have 3 years. He'll only have 1. But I think we've forgotten, and the dynasty outlook has changed on running backs in this time. But like after that 2017 class, when McCaffrey was 24, when Kamara was 24, when Mixon was 24, when Dalvin was 24, nobody thought they were like falling off. Like, now it feels like the dynasty community is like, oh, the running back's 25, we're done with him. But that hasn't always been the case. So I think Breece has a good chance to be the dynasty RB1 this time next year, going almost consensus ahead of Bijan and Gibbs.
Well, look at where McCaffrey is still a top 5 dynasty running back.
Yeah, he is.
And he's still viewed that way.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll kind of do mine a little bit out of order. This one was like my last one, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. And I don't know if this is bold. I don't know if it isn't, is that CMC finally falls out of the top 5 dynasty running backs, because I know a lot of people had him as their running back 4 in dynasty. Josh was one of them. I still put Taylor ahead of him, but still kind of in the same tier. But I think this is it. This is the last time we see CMC in the top 5. He's going to be 20. He's going to be going into his age 30 season next year, I believe. And even though he got his new deal, or maybe he'll be 29 to start next season.
Yeah.
Time is going to catch up with CMC this year. And it's not that I think he's going to have a bad year, but I think that Bijan outscores him. I think Breece outscores him. And I think him finally not being the RB1 overall finish, I think that's when people are going to start to flip that gear and switch in their head and bump him down boards.
Right. And I don't even think it's only that. I think the only thing keeping him up there at this point is he hasn't just been the RB1. He's been the RB1 by however many points. I mean, he's been far and away. If he's only the RB1 by 3 points, 10 points, something like that, I think he'll drop from the top 5. I think you'll see similar to what's happened to Travis Kelce the last couple of years, to where he's no longer been the tight end 1 by a million points, and he's fallen down. I think something very similar will happen to Christian McCaffrey. I can agree with that.
Yeah, and I think it still happens because I was looking at just the landscape of the running backs around him. Like, obviously, there's not much of an argument you can make to take him over Breece, Gibbs, or Bijan right now. Taylor is obviously still that guy. You can argue CMC versus Taylor. But after that, the production-wise, there is such a fall-off at the running back position. Like, after CMC, like, there's guys that I like, but you really want to argue Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, and James Cook over Christian McCaffrey? No, you don't want to do that. You can't do that.
No.
So,
yeah.
Even with a sketchy, and that's why I think he's in the top 5 now, it's so sketchy past that top 5 guys. And even with that landscape still being the case, I think his time is finally up. And part of it is the 2025 running back class on paper looks pretty good right now.
Right.
Tell us your second one, Landon.
Well, I think both of those were probably our least spicy takes of these. So I think they get a little more and more as we go. My second one is, at this point next year, Caleb Williams will be consensus over CJ Stroud. Like, I don't know if that's going to be in the early first of startups, in the late first of startups. I don't know exactly where it'll be, but it will be, there will be very few people taking Stroud over Caleb Williams at this point next year. And I think, Superflex startups, they might be going both top 5 picks, but I just think Caleb's going to be ahead. And I don't think Caleb will be as good as CJ Stroud right away. CJ Stroud last year really lit the world on fire. Like, in terms of taking a team from 4 wins to how many games they win last year?
I think they won 9 regular season.
And he won a playoff game. Like, that impact, the way, throwing the ball all over the yard. Like, he was unbelievable. But in terms of fantasy, just rushing upside, I do believe in Caleb. I think the Bears have a good chance of making the playoffs. Even in that division, I know how good that division is. The NFC is sneaky better than last year, I think. The NFC's decent this year. I think the Bears have a really good chance because of how good Caleb is. But I just think...
And how good the rest of the team around him is, too.
Right. How good the team is, the rushing upside, the youth. He was, as a prospect, no one was thinking CJ Stroud is better than Caleb Williams as a prospect. Now, it might turn out he's a better NFL quarterback, but I think in terms of fantasy, in terms of dynasty, people are going to be like, Caleb Williams has a chance to be QB3 next year, for real. I really believe that. And I think Stroud is a touch overvalued in dynasty right now. And I think, not that he'll have a bad season, but, sophomore slumps happen. Like, guys, defenses figure them out. They take away their safety blankets. They know how to game plan better. I could see the efficiency coming down a little bit, and then Caleb just kind of taking over and being really, really good, and people saying, wow, this is the new guy. So I think it will be consensus that Caleb Williams is ahead of CJ Stroud in dynasty next year.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see it. I could see it being another case, kind of like with Stroud right now, to where he might be a little bit overvalued because Stroud is like the consensus. Like in Superflex startup, it's going like a combination of Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, and then Stroud, bang. And I've even seen where Stroud goes over Jalen Hurts, like relatively consistent. So like he's. People would say you could trade Mahomes or Josh Allen straight up for him, which I get it to a certain extent, but that's just it's too much, too rich for me. Yeah. And part of the thing he's got going for him is like they add help for Stroud, like they bring in Diggs, so he should have another good season.
Right.
But I kind of agree with you. I was actually listening to a different podcast that kind of said the same thing. It's not that we're expecting Stroud to have a bad season, but Stroud's going to have to adjust this year because defenses have an entire year of NFL film on him. They're going to figure out some of his tendencies. They're going to take away some of those big throws that he was able to do. And, it'll be kind of like Mahomes. Like Mahomes had to adjust once they figured like, oh, this dude's got a huge arm. He's accurate. He's not throwing deep on me anymore. It's not happening. So,
yeah, no, I'm pretty high on Caleb. I think he's really good. I think the Bears are going to be good. So
I could see him having a great rookie season and being ahead of Stroud and kind of in a similar situation to where he's a little overvalued. All right. My next two are sort of one, but I'll start with the first one. And I don't know if it's necessarily hot, but I think people are undervaluing Jamar Chase right now. And I think at the end of next season, he is the undisputed dynasty wide receiver 1. I think it's going to happen. It's going to kind of be like a CD situation to where I just think he's going to have that good a season, to where you got Jefferson and CD are 1 and 2 in most people's minds right now. They're 25 years old. Well, at the beginning of the next season, Jamar Chase is going to be 25 years old, coming off the huge season, and T. Higgins is going to be leaving. I think with the season, I think he's going to have right now, with the Bengals having it, when he gets the contract and T. Higgins leaves, with all those targets open, I think it's just going to be a landslide. Like, oh my gosh, Jamar Chase is the guy.
Yeah, no, it's possible. I mean, it's hard because people legit have him. Like, it's maybe not consensus, but a lot of people have him as wide receiver 4 now. They're having
Amon-Ra,
JJ, CD. Basically, everyone has those two, 1 and 2, and then a lot of people have Amon-Ra. So Chase being the dynasty wide receiver 1, I'd be surprised, but I definitely see the lane for it with T. Higgins leaving. Dynasty managers are pretty quick to forget how good people are. Like if Justin Jefferson with Sam Darnold is like the wide receiver 8 this year or something, which is great. Like that's a wide receiver 1 in any league with Sam Darnold. That's incredible. But like I could see people dropping him down because of that. I could see that. Yeah. So I could see Jamar Chase being wide receiver 1 because I could see him being the wide receiver 1 in redraft. I definitely could see that. And if that happens, why not have him the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty when he's going into his age 25 season?
His age 25 season with a brand new deal. Because if he wants to get paid this year, even if he doesn't, he's going to get paid next season. He's going to be the highest paid receiver. And again, you're tied to Joe Burrow. Like you look at the other receivers in that range of where they're going. Jared Goff is great. Yeah. He ain't Joe Burrow. Who knows what J.J. McCarthy is? Dak Prescott, we don't like him, but he's a good quarterback. He ain't Joe Burrow.
I don't think he's going to be on the Cowboys next year.
You don't think Dak will?
No. Should that have been one of my bold predictions? Dak's not on the Cowboys?
I don't know if it's necessarily a bold prediction or not. Dak is a weird conversation right now because like they're going to have to pay him regardless, but like if he just waits, he's going to get that same he can get that same contract offer from the Cowboys with other teams and play the field. And if he doesn't like the field, the Cowboys are still going to make him that offer and he can just go back.
No chance he signs. 0. Look at what just happened with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, the worst thing happened. He tore his Achilles in his walk year, and he got $45 million from the Falcons a year. So that means worst case scenario, Dak tears his Achilles. The worst thing that can happen, he's going to get 60. Like he's not going to get $1 more than everyone else. He's getting 60 from someone. And if he's a free agent, it might be 65. I'm not kidding. So he's not signing. So CD, yeah, I really don't think Dak will be the quarterback there next year. And Dak, he can't win a playoff game, but he can support fantasy receivers.
Neither does Kirk Cousins. And he got 45.
No, he can support fantasy receivers. So, people will ding CD for that. And then, if Marvin, obviously Marvin could be, but like he's got to have an incredible season to be the dynasty wide receiver 1. So I could see it being Chase. Chase for sure.
Yeah.
And then you go ahead and do your next one. You go ahead and do your next one.
I was just thinking they were kind of tied the same as I think Chase has that kind of year and has that kind of production and all the stars align. He's the clear-cut 1. And I think Marvin comes in and passes everybody else and he's 2. I really think that could.
Wow.
Because I don't think it's insane because look at Marvin. You got the age thing, which receivers doesn't really matter. Like Justin Jefferson at 26 or Marvin at 22. I don't really care because like for the next 4 or 5 years, they're both going to be awesome. So
yeah,
potato there. But given the age and everything, if he comes out there, I don't even think he has to have a transcendent rookie season. Like if he comes out there, has 1,200 yards, which is, that's really good.
That's really
like 1,200
good.
yards, that's really good. But like 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns, given the offense he's in, do you think that's not even an unrealistic outcome for this year? Is like, oh, Marvin has 150 targets and 1,200 yards. Yeah, because the only other option is Trey McBride, and Kyler throws the ball a lot.
Yeah.
So if he does that with like the hype coming around him out of college as one of the quote-unquote best prospects in the past decade, and then he goes and has that kind of rookie season, I think, yeah, people are going to jump him up, and rightfully so. and he's going to pass CD and Jefferson and be the wide receiver 2.
It's definitely possible. I think the 2 players that are literally sitting on a rocket right now, meaning they have the best potential to shoot up rankings this year, is the 2 players in the league is Marvin and Kyle Pitts. Like, I think those 2 guys, if they have big seasons,
they're going to be untouchable.
If Kyle Pitts is the tight end 2 this year, and let's say Laporta's 3 and somebody else is 1, Kyle Pitts is the dynasty tight end 1. He will be. Just because people still remember the prospect he was. Yes.
And he's younger than all those guys.
He will jump Laporta. You're like, he won't jump Laporta, like after what Laporta just did. If Kyle Pitts is the tight end 2, he will be the tight end 1 in Dynasty. Just because.
What does Kyle Pitts have to do? He didn't have to have 1,000 yards.
No. People remember the talent. I think Marv's the same way. Like, if he comes out and if he does what Puka did last year, he's the wide receiver 1. I almost don't care what Chase does. Like, he'll be the wide receiver 1. But if he comes out, like you said, between 12 and 30, if he has the Brandon Ayuk season of last year, but a little different, less efficient, more targets, like if he has those numbers right around 1,308 touchdowns, yeah, we're looking at like, oh, he's going to be basically untouchable.
Oh, yeah. I think Chase had I think the reason Chase will be the 1 is because I think Chase comes out and is the wide receiver 1 for fantasy in 2024.
Right.
And he has one of those transcendent seasons where guys are like, oh my gosh, we remember like, oh yeah, Chase is actually that guy. So I think that puts him at 1. And then Marvin doesn't even have to exceed expectations, but just hit them. Everybody's expecting you to be great. He hits them at 22 years old. No, he's jumping to 2.
Man, does it kind of feel like, I mean, the Cardinals have like hidden him this preseason. Like, you see nothing about him.
You see Malik Neighbors all the time on Instagram.
You don't see Marv. And it's either because, man, there's two things it could be. One is like, man, this guy's not as good as we thought he was. I don't think that's the case. 2, the other reason might be like, oh, this guy's insane. We don't want anyone to be ready for this. I think it might be that.
From what I heard, obviously it's all talk, but in the joint practices with like the Dolphins, apparently Marvin was cooking people. Like they couldn't guard him.
Yeah.
Is that all talk?
Like, no,
maybe.
So
I never saw any photos, never saw any videos of anything, but that's what the word on the street was.
Right. I have him in our granddaddy of them all, and that is the league where just elite talent wins. You just won't, if you have elite talent, that's how you win that league. Depth doesn't matter. It's all about getting the best player in a trade, that kind of thing, which we talked about some last week. I am not afraid to trade my best players. I will trade anyone. I've never been more terrified to trade anyone.
Yeah, you are scared to trade him.
I'm terrified because, like, I'm getting fair value. People are interested in sending fair value for him. Like some of the receivers we've mentioned at the top of this tier, like people are willing to part ways with them for Marvin. And I can't do it because, like, what if I trade him and next year he's the unquestioned dynasty wide receiver 1? Like, or wide receiver 2, like you're saying. Like, I don't know. He could be that. He has a chance to, man, he has a chance to be the dynasty wide receiver 1 or 2 this time next year. He really does.
You know, you have sent me texts before of like talking about like even trading him for someone like Amon-Ra. You're like, do I do it straight up? And even I'm like, in this league, I'm like, dude, it's fair right now. Does it help you win this year? Probably. Fair. But yeah, it's like you said, going into next season, you could look at that and you'd be like, I wish I just had Marvin. You know?
Yeah. I've said multiple times to myself this offseason, I don't want to trade rookie Randy Moss.
No.
Like, and that's what he could be. That's what he could be. I don't want to trade that rookie. So, yeah.
Exciting.
Anyways, we got one more. I got one more.
Yeah, we got one more. You got one more.
I got one more. So this next one is less people will care about it, but I believe this in my bones. Like this is of my three, this is the one I believe the most. Is that at the end of this year, JSN will be a top 15 dynasty receiver and will be consensus going ahead of DK. He will be the wide receiver one in Seattle.
I hope that happens. I have a lot of shares of JSN.
I'm just believing the talent. Like people have forgotten so quickly the prospect this guy was.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was, I mentioned it a couple weeks ago when we talked about our dynasty buys, how good of a prospect he was. I just believe in the talent. I believe in the situation a little more now. They're going to be running a lot more 3 wide receivers than they did last year. So just, he's the type of guy that I think the more he gets on the field, the more they're going to give him the ball, because the more he's going to perform, the more he's going to produce. And I think at this point next year, people will be saying you're still going to want DK. DK's a really good player. I actually just took him in a startup this weekend. I still like DK, but they're going to be saying, if you can only have one wide receiver in Seattle, you want it to be JSN. And it's not just because of the age. It'll be because of the production as well.
Yeah, no. It's always hard because people like you call you stupid in the argument, but I hear the argument. People are like, if Rome Odunze was in any other class, he would be the wide receiver one. They were like, if he was in last year's class, he'd be the wide receiver one. I'm like, I genuinely I want to say no because but I don't, because people will be like, you're crazy. JSN was that good a prospect, guys. He was that good of a prospect. Like Rome might have been tied with him out there, but I don't think Rome would have been ahead of him. JSN was that highly touted coming out.
Right. And people can say that because he fell to 21 because he was hurt his junior year. Like he didn't play much his junior year. So that's why people have forgotten. Like his big year was his sophomore year, which is what you like to see for a player to break out in his sophomore year.
Yeah,
but because
you don't
he was
want to see
banged
the
up his
late
junior year,
breakout.
Yeah, because he was banged up his junior year, people kind of, some of the glisten faded from him. And then last year it was, I think, much more situation than talent why he wasn't producing. And I think this year, I think him and DK finish similar in terms of redraft this year. And when that happens and they remember, JSN's really good, I think he'll be a top 15 dynasty wide receiver. And and that's hard because there's really good dynasty wide receivers right now. Like there's 18 or 19 studs, basically. Yeah. There's 18 or 19 studs. So to be top 15 is really saying something because there's only 15 spots. And I think he'll produce to a level where he merits it, and people will say, yeah, that's the top wide receiver in Seattle.
I can confidently say I hope this happens. For all of my JSN stock, I really hope it happens.
Right.
All right. You ready to talk about some trades?
We can get into some trades.
These will be interesting because for several of these, I don't have league size or format, actually for most of them I do. But we can talk about it too, how we talked about it in the last episode. League size matters so much when you're looking at some of these trades.
So much. I think what we do is we just kind of base it off 12-team Superflex. And then when we talk about the trade, we can mention, I would like this trade if it was this league settings or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that'd be
good. First one, we've got Brandon Ayuk and Chuba Hubbard for Devontae Adams and a 25 first. I think we can both agree, even though I know you love Devontae, Brandon Ayuk is clearly ahead of him in Dynasty.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so yeah, looking at this, Devontae is at the earliest 7th round startup pick. He's usually going somewhere between 7 and 9. And Ayuk is going 3rd, maybe 4th. Now that he got a contract, he's pretty much going 3rd. So he's way ahead of Devontae. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, where it gets interesting is Chuba Hubbard is basically nothing to me.
Yeah. In this trade, he's nothing. In this trade,
but
you're
the
not
25, the 25 first is not nothing.
No.
So
that is yeah. So the interesting thing to me is I can't tell who is what. I can't tell if like these are two contenders, maybe. It doesn't seem like a rebuild and a contender, because if you're bringing in Devontae, that's like a competing piece, and you're bringing in a first. So it's hard to tell who is what in this deal. I think the value's pretty fair. I really like Brandon Ayuk, but I would be fine if I could get his production or possibly a little more than his production this year and at a first. I'd be fine selling him for that. If I could get Devontae, which is going to replace his production now, and at a 25 first. I mean, obviously we don't know where that is. One thing I would do if you're making trades for firsts right now, always, if it's a terrible team that you're getting there first, expect that to be a mid first. And if it's a decent team, you don't know where they're going to land, expect that to be a late first. Always when you're making trades, act like the first is later and then be surprised if it's an early first. But you don't want to make a trade, be like, oh, this is going to be like a top 3 pick, and you pay a certain price for it thinking it's going to be top 3, and then you get the 107 and you're like, well, that trade stunk. Always assume it's a late first. So if I'm doing that, I'm actually fine with trading Ayuk for this Devontae in a first.
You know, I really like it. It's as a contender, I don't mind doing that. The down tier for Devontae, because that keeps you competing and puts your outlook on the future a little bit better. Because a lot of times when you're competing, you've got to go all out and sacrifice the future sometimes, basically, to get that championship. So to put that little bright star, like, hey, if things don't go my way this year, I've got this still, waiting in the wings. And you bring up a good point, too, like about the argue about the firsts, is everybody's like, oh, well, I think that team's the worst in the league. Like, you might think that, and on paper they might be. Yeah. But when the fantasy dice roll happens, things hit the fan, and it's not always going to work out the way you see it in your head.
Right. We were in a league this year with a guy whose team at the beginning of the year looked awful. Like terrible. Whatever you're imagining, we thought it was worse. And then he had CJ Stroud. He had Tank Dell. He had Kyron Williams. He had just a couple other guys who just hit. Yeah, Devon, he just hit massive.
Every single rookie pick he made this past year. And he got Sam Laporta. He drafted Sam Laporta.
Turned into gold.
Every single pick he made hit. Everyone.
Yes, everything. And he made the playoffs. So,
and now his team's really good.
A late first. Right. I always expect that to be a late first. But another thing I do like about this, and I like Ayuk. Like, if I got the Ayuk side in this, I don't hate that, because Ayuk is just got a contract extension, right? He's a really good player. Like, he's going to be a top 18 receiver this year, probably top 15, maybe top 12. Like, he's a good player, and he's young. But another interesting thing I have about this for my contender brain, if this is a contender that gets Devontae in the first, you get Devontae, hopefully he produces this year, and now you have an extra first to flip. If you're really contending some point during the season, bring in somebody else. So if I'm down tiering from Ayuk, the only way I'm doing it for Devontae is if I'm getting a first in return. That's a pretty big down tier. But I'm kind of fine with either side. I could see Chuba being a throw in here if the guy getting Ayuk had Jonathan Brooks possibly, but other than that, Chuba means nothing really. So this is, I think it's pretty fair.
Okay. All right, next trade. This one actually happened in our Scramble Drill League Dynasty. DK Metcalf for Trey Benson and a 26 second.
Did this happen in the Scramble Drill League? I remember him getting traded.
It did.
Okay. Wow, now I don't want to give my takes because people are going to be like, oh, you hate me in that league. But
no, we don't hate you. I will say I put this poll on Instagram, and whoever made the trade did send this in to me, so obviously they were okay with us talking about it.
I think this is a touch light for DK for me.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand the trade. But DK is one of those guys. Last week I talked about if you're a rebuild, you don't have to trade anybody that's producing. And I don't know if this is a rebuild. I don't know that I'm not having the situation in front of me. But like if you're a rebuild, you don't have to trade anybody just because they're producing. DK's a guy I think you can hold on to. He's got enough contract. He's young enough. He's producing enough.
26.
Where this is a little, yeah, it's a little light for me for DK. Like I'd be looking to get a little more if I was trading him. But I do really like Trey Benson. I mean, you add the second round pick, and I mean, who knows if this is one of those trades where like right now I lean DK, but I could see me sitting in week 8 or 9 this year if like, I hate to say it, but if James Conner's like banged up, thinking like, oh, this guy really did well getting Benson in a second because Benson looks really good. I could see that happening. But as of right now, I would prefer to get a little more for DK.
Yeah. I think the holdup for me, and I try not to, I do sometimes, but I try not to get caught up in like the little pieces of the trade. But the 26 second, I would just rather that be, if you're going to move him for Benson, I want it to be a second this coming year. And maybe that's just me. A second 2 years out is a little light. And even when I saw it, I'm like, that's DK's going price these days. But at the same time, I'm kind of with you. I'm really high on Trey Benson. And even not for this year, just because I know James Conner's a starter. But like you said, God forbid James Conner gets hurt and Trey Benson like locks into that starting role. You're probably not going to be able to trade DK straight up for Benson because if it's like a serious injury, now you know Benson's got that backfield on lock for the foreseeable future. So
yeah, and that's a good offense to be the RB1 in. We've seen that because I personally don't think James Conner's the most talented guy out there, but he's been really good when he's healthy, like really good, because they feed him, they give him the ball. And if we turn the clocks back, like going into last season, like Trey Benson going into his last year of college, there was a lot of Trey Benson's a slam dunk running back 1 in this class. There's a lot of that out there. And he didn't produce quite as well his last year of college, but I think there was some injury there. Like, my point is, I think we're forgetting how good of a prospect Benson was.
I think I want to say he had an ACL injury his freshman year.
Yeah.
So that held him back a little bit too.
Right, but I think we're forgetting how good of a prospect Benson was. So he's really good. But as for right now, I think I would prefer DK. And if I'm trading DK, I prefer to get a little more than Trey Benson.
Yeah. It's definitely not great now, but I guess the upside future is with the Benson side.
Yeah. And I literally just said this time next year, DK is not going to be the wide receiver 1 in Seattle. So
yeah. All right, this is one somebody sent in. I'm not sure. I'm going to assume this is Superflex. Darnell Mooney, Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, Tank Dell, and the 212, which has got to be this year, for the 112 and 225 firsts.
How many tanks can you fit in one trade?
Tank, and Travis.
They about maxed it out for the NFL. So what do you think about this one?
This one, it's weird to me. Gosh, this is tough because I think ETN and Tank Dell are probably worth a first. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I think those guys are worth a first each.
They are.
So
for sure.
For 225 firsts, if you're rebuilding, I don't hate sending ETN for a first and Tank Dell for a first and just kicking the can down the next year. The 112 in Superflex leagues, that's this year. You're looking at a Jonathan Brooks, a JJ McCarthy, Ladd McConkey, Ladd McConkey, Bo Nix, somebody like that.
ETJ.
So Brian Ty, yeah. I think I prefer the picks. In this because Bigsby, the 212, and the Darnell Mooney, I think I'd just rather take my shot at the 212. So I think my take on this is if I'm a rebuilder, I definitely like the pick side on this.
If I'm a rebuilder, I think this is the time to sell ETN. I like selling ETN right now if I'm a rebuilder. You throw Tank Bigsby in there just because you're sending ETN, give a little insurance.
Yeah, that's just the insurance. Keep the guy happy, basically.
Yeah, just the insurance. I am admittedly a little lower on ETN than most and a little higher on Tank Dell than most. Tank Dell for me is easily worth a first. Like, here's my rule for when you're trading 4 firsts, or when you're trading a player directly for 1 first. If I got Tank Dell with this pick, would I be happy? And if the answer is yes, then you don't make the trade. Like, if I'm trading Tank Dell for a first, I want to think, oh, the player I'm going to get is better than Tank Dell. Like, I'm not just kicking the can down the road just to kick the can down the road. I'm kicking the can down the road just because I think I can upgrade. And I think chances are the player you get with that first, especially if it's late, is probably not as good as Tank Dell.
And Tank Dell's value is a little bit depleted right now just because Diggs is there, but Diggs isn't going to be there past next season probably.
Right. I could see either way. I mean, if I'm a rebuild, I'm fine with making this trade. I'm probably I probably would have preferred to take Tank out of it and just go the 112 and 125 first. And maybe try to take the 212 out of it or something. But I'm fine with making the trade. I just don't like giving up Tank Dell as a rebuild. But
yeah, no, I don't blame you on the Dell side. I guess for me, if I'm trying to rebuild, and obviously this is a trade that you're assuming the person getting the picks is rebuilding.
Right.
But I don't mind trading Travis just for 25 first. The difference for me is the Darnell Mooney, Bigsby, and the 212. If I'm breaking it down in my head for the 112, I would much rather have the 112 and take the shot at the player there.
I'd prefer the 112.
So I think that's the deal breaker in my head that makes me really prefer the pick side versus, and maybe that makes up for the value difference between Tank Dell and the 25 first. So I think it's pretty even if the side getting the picks is rebuilding.
Right. I think the value might actually be with the players in this one, but for a rebuild, whatever. You want to hit the reset, that's fine.
And picks, we always forget about this time of year, but those 25 firsts are going to skyrocket in value in about 3 months.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're going to be crazy high value. So picks are never bad to get because somebody's going to get rookie fever, and you can always sell those picks.
Right. And who knows? I just said I'm admittedly higher on Tank Dell. If he has another injury this year, even if it's not that serious, I will be much lower. That will scare me. So,
yeah,
maybe not a bad time to sell.
All right. This is one I went back and forth on if we should even put it in here. This is a trade I did.
I think it's a good one. I think it's a good one for us to talk about.
I did this one. So I traded, and more than most people how much I love Josh Allen. I am a huge Josh Allen fan.
Yes, you are.
So I traded Josh Allen. I traded him, Baker Mayfield, and Tyler Lockett, and I got in return Justin Herbert, J.J. McCarthy, a 25 first, and a 26.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thoughts?
I really like this deal for you, and I almost would never advocate for trading Josh Allen. Like, he's the number one player in Superflex. He's the number one player. But if you're going to trade him, get a haul like Herbert, McCarthy, and 2 firsts. And this is a good example of just letting the value in a startup fall to you. Just take whatever value's there. Like Ben, we just did a startup in this league this year, and Ben he said, I'm just going to take the most valuable player each round. And it just kind of fell to him that it was more of a rebuild team. Like, you didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to draft a young rebuild team.
No, I was planning, I had Josh Allen. I'm like, obviously I got the best player I can win. And it just, Rome Odunze fell to a certain spot, a really good value. And you got other guys like Jaden Daniels and somebody like that.
Jaden Daniels.
All good players, all good values where I got them. but the team just doesn't have the juice this year.
Right. And you just took the value, and then you assess your team afterward and say, well, I'm not going to compete this year even with Josh Allen. Let's see if I can go buy low on Justin Herbert. Let's see if I can, J.J. McCarthy's out for the year. See if I can get him and then add multiple firsts. So now you have 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years, and you have 3 guys who we think are going to be good quarterbacks with Herbert, McCarthy, and then Jaden Daniel. And on the flip side, the guy who brings in Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, I'm going to leave Lockett out of this, but the guy who brings in Allen and Baker Mayfield, he gave up a lot to get him, but he gets the number 1 player in Superflex Fantasy Football, the number 1 player in Josh Allen. He brings in Baker Mayfield, who in a 12-team Superflex,
he starts.
You want Baker Mayfield on your team. There's not a team that doesn't want Baker Mayfield in a 12-team Superflex. And he did it because the draft kind of fell to him in a contending way. He took Christian McCaffrey. He took a couple guys and he looks at his team and he's like, man, I'm a contender. He has J.J. McCarthy. He goes down for the year and he thinks, this is my time. Like and he has a very real chance of winning the league.
Yeah, and it worked out.
Very real chance of winning the league.
It worked out too. Like it was one of those, I took advantage to capitalize on a situation, and not like I took advantage of the guy per se, but like you said, his team is really good, and his other quarterback was J.J. McCarthy. So when you lose that for the year as a contender, you're like, I got to get some points here. So realistically for this season, he actually doesn't lose points in his lineup with this trade. Yes, you lose the 2 firsts, which you don't necessarily want to do, but to essentially upgrade Justin Herbert to Josh Allen, who people had questions about Justin Herbert this season to begin with, and you bring in Baker Mayfield, who's a more than serviceable starter in a 12-team Superflex league. So he just adds points to his lineup, and I get to look down the road toward the future.
Yeah, I think this trade made a lot of sense for both sides. I will say this, for merits on both sides. If you're a contender and you see a chance to get Josh Allen, jump on it. He's so valuable. It's kind of hard to overpay for him. Like he gave up Herbert and 2 firsts and J.J. McCarthy, and I don't think he really overpaid. I think the value's very fair. And on the flip side, like if you are kind of a rebuild, but you have an asset as good as Josh Allen, milk it for all it's worth. Get everything you can for it. Hold a bidding war if you have to. So I think it made sense for both sides.
And it's we mentioned earlier in last episode, when you're rebuilding, there are some guys you don't have to trade. You don't have to trade Josh Allen if you're a rebuilding team.
You do not have to trade Josh Allen.
When the opportunities like this come forward to where I don't want to trade Josh Allen if I'm not getting another elite quarterback like a Herbert. Like I just was flat out I'm not going to trade Josh Allen if I'm not getting a certain quarterback in return. But Herbert was one of the quarterbacks I was willing to say, all right, I'll take him plus some other stuff. Okay, Jamar Chase for Brandon Ayuk, a 25 first and a 26 first.
The reason I want to talk about this one is because this is a clear one for me. And we kind of mentioned something along these lines last week. This is a clear one for me of the answer is yes, solely based on the league size.
Yeah.
Solely based on the league size. If this is a 12-team league and I have Jamar Chase and you offer me this, yes, I'm doing it. I will take 2 firsts on top of Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is obviously a big step down from Jamar Chase, but if you can get a young top 15 producing wide receiver with contract insulation whose situation is probably only going to get better next year and add 2 first-round picks on top of that in a 12-team deep league, yes, sign me up for that all day. If I'm in a 10-team start 9, I understand the value that's coming in with Brandon Ayuk and 2 firsts.
It's not a bad offer.
I'm just going to hold on to Jamar Chase.
Bad trade offer.
No, I'm just going to hold on to Jamar Chase though. Like this trade defines I accept it literally based on league size, and that's
Yeah.
it.
It is on paper, no matter what the league size, it is a fair value offer.
Yes, it is fair. It is
But
fair.
and like we talked about in Mully, the granddaddy of them all, an 8-team league, this does not touch Jamar Chase. It doesn't.
I'll make this offer to you right now.
Yeah, and it's not getting done.
I have Brandon Ayuk. I have a 25 and 26 first. I'll make this offer right now to
And
you.
I will not accept it. In that league, having Jamar Chase is such a big advantage over someone having Brandon Ayuk that the first don't matter.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah. So in a deep league, I think most people play in 12-team Superflex. I think that's mostly. And in that case, I do like Ayuk here. Just because in 2 years, you hope to have 3 viable players. 3 players you can at least play in your flex
Yeah.
in 3 years. Whereas Jamar Chase is 1 player, but in a shallower league, I still might just go with the upside.
Yeah. No, I completely understand it.
These are some good ones though. These were nothing. There was nothing crazy. That's like, oh my gosh, dude, you got ripped off. Nothing like that.
That's why I like these. Like, I wouldn't put somebody in here like, oh, somebody traded a 25 first and second and got Jamar Chase and Jonathan Brooks. Like, no, we all know that's not fair.
Oh, home leagues are fun.
Yeah, they concern me. I was in a home league. I didn't put this in there. Somebody traded Michael Pittman and got Malik Neighbors. I blew a gasket in the league chat. I'm like, and this is a league where I'm like desperately trying to trade for a wide receiver. Like, my team is very good, but it's like a top 3 team, and I'm trying to like get to where like I'm clearly perceived as the top team. So I'm trying to trade a first round pick, and it's a first round pick that it's another one of those. You don't want to, if you're getting the pick, you don't want to assume it's a top 3 pick. But I have the first of a team that is very bad on paper. I'm trying to sell that as a top 2 pick and use that as a trade bait there. And I want a receiver. And the fact that I saw Malik Neighbors go for that price made me very angry.
That is so tough.
Home leagues are tough. Anyway, that.
Hey, I've got Pittman in a league where Josh has Neighbors. I'll make that trade
see
too.
if you can get that done. Josh is contending.
I'll see if I can get
Realistically,
it done.
Pittman could outscore
Yeah.
Neighbors this year. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
could.
he will. He could.
Very well could.
He could.
Landon, unless you've got anything, I think that is all I've got for today. I know what I've got on the docket this time tomorrow.
Right. Unless you have a time machine that can get me to tomorrow at 8:14 Eastern time, then I need nothing else from you.
Yeah, no, it's and it's really weird with my alternate work schedule I've got right now. I work this Saturday, which sucks, but I'm off tomorrow. So me twiddling my thumbs tomorrow is gonna be tough. Like, I might spend 4 hours in the gym just doing something.
Yeah, that's going to be a long one. It's going to be a long day.
All right. Well, that's all we've got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you liked it, give us a review. Shout us out on Instagram. Hopefully Josh will get this out soon. I know he's a bit busy with the new baby. Send Josh a congratulations on Instagram if you haven't. And yeah, I think that's all we got. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
What's his name?
Crew Johnson.
Little Crew Johnson. Way to go,
Proud of
Josh.
you.
I hope he didn't want us not to say that.
Well, it's in there now. You know what? He's the editor. He can cut it if he wants.
He edits the podcast.
He can cut it if he wants.
He edits it. He can take
Yeah.
it out. He can cut it if he wants.
Yep. That's all we got. We'll see you boys.